Welcome everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Bread for Soul Convos with myself, Sir LSG. Firstly, thank you for joining me and watching the show, especially to those people who've been watching the show like so religiously. I'm very much honored to be able to do this and actually have some eyes on the show. And I've been so blessed with this particular show because it has gotten me to have conversations with a lot of my icons, people that I've been looking up to, for such a long time. And one of those people is here on the show. Greg, welcome to the show. Greg Maloka.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Your
Eight.
name is apt. I love your name. It comes with instant honor and respect. So it makes it so easy for us to call you sir. Sir.
It puts some amount of pressure on me, I must say. But I mean, like, I think I've done not so bad so far.
That's awesome, man. No, you've done great. You really have.
No, thank you.
I enjoy
Um,
work. No.
I do have to ask you, Greg. You are such a big figure in the SA media industry. The work that you've done, also as a DJ. In the underground scene, we see that your love for music, your love for soulful music, it kind of translates when you listen to Kai FM. Like ra utlwa, go a utlwala gore no motho o mo stationing is somebody who actually cares about the music. But I want to ask you, to start by this, and do you ever spend any amount of time reflecting on your successes or failures?
It's an interesting question. I mean, for and I think for the last I've been in this game now about 25 years. And I think the first 23, there was no time to, reflect on anything. It's like a revolution. A revolution you understand and accept that it comes with, all types of things. So you never spend time, reflecting much on success or failure. You keep going.
Hmm.
And I think because there was and is there's always a lot to do. We've got a lot to do, especially as Black people globally, but just like as Black people in this country. There's a lot to do. So any level of success or any sort of pitfall or failure that you've found along the way, there was no time to dwell on or celebrate. But I guess as I've gotten older, and as the challenges become more complex, you start to take a moment to take a step back and ask the question, what is the lesson in a pitfall? What is the lesson in a tough situation? But you also learn to celebrate the small wins, because you start to actually truly appreciate what it takes to get to certain things or to achieve certain things. But also what's become important for me, where success is concerned, has been that we need to be able to record our success so we can explain it to people. Because the problem is, Butaki, we've been succeeding so much by accident that we have very little design of anything. So you record your successes, you make note of them, yes, to celebrate them and have fun and enjoy them, but also to be able to explain them and be able to to tell the next crowd and the next generation about them when you ask them.
Yeah, it's such a I find it such a complex balance to get, because when you're looking ahead and you see so many things, so much work that still needs to be done, it's easy to just like put your head down and go at it. But also, like you say, at the same time, um, how do we tell people how we actually did what we did, how we achieved all of those things? And I
Yeah.
think similarly, and this is more very much overlooked, by us as black people our failures. We kind of like want to run away or hide our failures, but actually, most of our successes sometimes comes from failure. We learn from such difficult adversities or moments that didn't go as planned. Now we know, into the future, how to act, what not to do, and things like that. Um, but I have to ask you, Bragragne, then when you've reached like the levels of success that you've reached, how important is it for you like to really keep your mind focused on the prize? And the reason, the point I'm trying to get to is that with my own album, like which for me it was a success, like to reach an album that's like very soulful, very soft within house music, and for it to get as much exposure that it got without any major labels, without any major contributors, just purely by us learning from other people. I regarded that as success, but it became a very difficult thing to overcome because I had no plans on what do I do after that. Like after you reach such an album and you release it, it's well received, it's all good, but then what next? How is important is it for you to kind of always put your eye on the next prize, so to say?
So there's a couple of things to think about, and I want to pick it up from a point where because we are we are black people, so we like talking about race. But the context is very important, in that all of these things that we talk about have happened to other people who were successful before. I think it's important to say that lessons and failures and successes are not for certain people, and not for others. I think all these things, everyone who's successful in their craft and in what they do, would tell a similar story, just in terms of failures and successes. It is important to understand that the playing fields aren't level, and for me that becomes a very important point to say, in a situation where the playing fields aren't level, how do you then play that game? How do you how do you learn from those before you, but also how do you start a new thing? I think we're also very scared of charting uncharted territories, just like going into the deep blue sea, um, and try and find new ways and try and do new things. There's always a safety net. I mean, I love seminars and talking to entrepreneurs who have had who've got a story to tell. But each of us write a story as we go along. The challenges are going to be different. So in all honesty, I can't say to you, um, you know, uh, this is what you should have done, for instance, with your album. But I can say to you that now the things that because your one album is only your beginning. It's
Yeah,
not your entire life.
yeah, sure.
If you think about a Quincy Jones, who's got hundreds, in fact thousands of recordings, and if you think about his experience in music, from recording number one to today, he's had to do a lot of growing, and he's probably still growing in his in his old age. If you see a guy who's got who's of similar age to him, Mosquito.
Yeah,
Mosquito's old. Halali things come on, looking so good, making all of us look bad. That guy Quincy Jones there, man. But
sure.
you think about Mosquito, he's and I mean, we're very close friends. We've been friends, for a very long time. And I've watched how he's learned and grown as well, in the music game. So there's lessons that are common, that people can share, and then there are those lessons that are just they're yours. They're only for you, and you've got to confront them and you've got to deal with them. The thing that's important about knowing your next or what to do with your next is being clear about what your next is. And sometimes you will not be as clear as you would want to, but it doesn't mean you don't go for it.
Because I mean, like that could take you in another path as well. Like if you were going in that direction, certain things could happen, but that still kind of propels you forward. It's not like it kind of, maybe it's not the main thing exactly how you envisioned it, but it just
Yeah.
take you somewhere. But I think it's so important to, when I'm chatting to you, I feel that it's important to also understand where you came from, especially with the kind of thinking that you brought within YFM back in the days. What are some of the ideologies that at the time, when you came and became part of the station, that you just had to do, like you couldn't do without these, that you could say separated YFM from many other stations, especially at the time?
Well, I mean, as cliched as it sounds, we had to be authentic. We had to be real. So, and the beauty about being real is, you don't have to think about how to be something else or someone else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
mean, I think the most difficult thing is waking up to be someone, every day, and like
Mm,
having to practice and having to think about, how do I become this person, as opposed to being yourself,
mm,
and focusing on, how do you become a better version of yourself,
mm,
and what that takes, and also just surrounding yourself with people who are your best supporters and your fiercest critics, in the most positive way.
mm,
um, you know People who want the same thing as you. You may not want it in similar ways,
mm,
but also people who understand, and I refer to it as what time it is, but what century are we in? What
mm,
generation are we? What is our challenge? What are the things that we are here to do?
mm,
um, and I mean, we were in that mindset as young people, and which shows you the power of young people, and how we miss out on a lot by not listening to young people, because as young people, there's a level of honesty, there's a level of bravery, because there are no barriers,
mm,
that they see. They don't fear things. Their appetite for risk
mm,
is quite high. There's a lot of value in that, and there's a lot of value in guiding that energy.
mm,
Um, so so YFM was that for us. YFM was it was about freedom. Very quickly we understood, that it wasn't just about creating a successful commercial radio station, for young Black audiences in South
mm,
Africa who otherwise didn't have a medium that focused on them up until that point.
mm.
Um, so, so the meaning of it ran far deeper than just, the classic model of creating a radio station and running it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure there must have been some kind of, I'm just assuming some kind of resistance within YFM, because normally when change comes, people are, resistant towards change, especially if it's being brought by people who were kind of almost inexperienced as much as people who have had been doing it for years back and at the time. Did you find some resistance when you had to implement some of those changes?
There was no resistance at YFM itself, because, remember, we started that business from scratch. So, if anything, a lot of the energy was, about the urgency. So, are we doing this quick enough, or are we
Mm,
getting there fast enough, or are we doing this, hard enough? That's where a lot of the clash and the energy came from, which was a fantastic space to be in. The resistance came from the industry,
mm,
in that here we were, new player, in the market, young guys, seemingly inexperienced. I mean, a lot of us were experienced in life, and I guess this is again where people get certain things wrong. So,
mm,
if in a competitive environment you look at your competitor, or even just in a workspace, you look at someone and you say, well, they have no experience. Um, you got to say, um, experience in what, and what kind of experience is needed for what they need to do. And sometimes, finding people who are green is probably the best thing ever, because they are bringing a thinking that no one else would have thought about. So you've got to be able to embrace that kind of thinking. So the resistance within YFM did not exist. I mean, um, the resistance was in the industry. The advertising industry rejected us when we started. And a variety of marketers and brands were, and these are brands that were supported by us as young people, brands that were selling to young people in this country right across. And we never got that respect. So there was a lot of resistance there. Interestingly, internal resistance, I suppose, came when I moved to Kaya, because Kaya was turning 10 when I joined, and it had been around 10 years, so it had established a way of thinking.
Yeah.
You're this guy from YFM, and here we are, calm adults, and you are this chaotic youngster, who caused chaos, little brata, my time, and we had to change that mindset, to say no, this is not what this thing is.
Yeah.
It's not about your age, it's about your state of mind. In fact, and this was a lesson at Y, right, where we said, being youthful is not about your age, it's about your state of mind. So yeah, I mean, that's really how we handled all of these rejections, I guess, that were threatening our existence.
Yeah, I read that when you got to Kaya, and I mean, you were 35 at the time, and
Yeah.
you brought to the station a view that Kaya would not be in the business of traditional radio. And from the times of YMEG, it was clear, like, I mean, YFM was so different, and the things that you did where other stations are still yet to do, even in 2020. I mean, it's such a thing, to a station having a own magazine, which obviously KFM does right now. I want to ask you, what are some of the things that when you got in, the things that you wanted to implement that you've seen happening at Kaya?
So, geez, there's quite a few. So the one is, and I mean, you mentioned the age, which is an important thing. Is that we took a decision, after many deliberations, right, to say, what, who's our core person? Who are we trying to talk to? And we did a lot of work to, to define this person, this Afropolitan. And 35 was the age, which was right for this brand, was right for the station, because 35-year-olds are, the and I'm going to use this term carefully, the proper adults of today, if you like. This is where the economy sits. These are people who sit with, the most influence. These are economically successful people, large groups of very educated people. They've lived, a bit of life to tell interesting stories, but also to give guidance to, next generations. 35 is such an important age, in the context of South Africa today. So that was kind of like a point where we landed, and then everything had to converge towards, what is it about this person that we want to, that we want to offer as a medium of conversation, because very quickly we had said, Kaya is not a radio station. We're in a business format. We're a content business, but we are a group of people who are in, Revolution Volume 2. YFM was Revolution Volume 1. and volume two is kind of like a continuation of that because if you think about it, I was blessed to work with people who were in two of their most significant years, when they were young people and when they were, older young people, um, and with technology moving as fast as it was, with trends moving in a particular direction, it was very important for us, to understand how you use a lot of these, influences, a lot of these trends to positively shift and change people's lives. So if you think about, we were the ignored market, you know what I mean? Nobody spoke to us. And a lot of people to this day don't believe it. But if you think about banks only started talking properly to black people 10 years ago. So it's almost like we emerged. In fact, there was a term in the advertising space where we were called the emerging market, and we used to ask the question, "Where are we emerging from?" It's
Yeah.
like it's South Africa. It's almost like we were never here. If you follow, card so advertising that spoke to middle class and upper middle class, pockets of society in South Africa did not consider black people at all, right? So part of this revolution was to change that, was to change the picture, and it was to reintroduce, to this country, sadly, the fact that there are other people, who have been here for the longest time. They've just been ignored. I mean, airlines were not talking to you, destinations were not talking to you. So if you think about tourism as an example, I mean, people forget, just 30 years ago, there were places you couldn't go in because you are black, and it was fine and it was legal, you know. And then, people expect to, 25 years or, whatever many years into the game, you can just flick a switch and, advertise, and people will just go to places. And, researchers come up with, a lot of this, uh, you know, uh, uh, findings like, black people don't travel, or like, and no one is addressing the fundamental challenge as to, how did socialization affect people? How we behave at any point in our lives is based on what our experience has been in the past. So you can't ignore that. You can't ignore, and it's not like you don't want to change it. This is the whole mission. This is the whole point. But it's also, you've got to be very careful to know that you are not changing it into something that was always there and you never had, because this is the danger of being someone else now. What you want to say is we want to change it, but we are rewriting the script. This is how it's done now because we want to do it this way. If you think about neighborhoods as an example, the reason you get all these, and I'll throw a few stereotypes, and I hope I don't get into trouble here, but hona le ntho ya gore, didaki di rata leraisa. I know, like, black people are noisy, right? So whenever they move into a neighborhood, it's just chaos, but you've got to ask yourself the question, one, if you've been in a township setting all your life, and everybody lived so close together, right? And you didn't have personal private space by any measure, right? And now you move into this place that's got its own rules, and how you used to live was very communal, Nelly Blauman, music, there was always kind of like this. That's how stuff. And obviously with experience and finding other places and moving to other spaces, you then discover certain things about yourself. You discover, I'd actually like peace and quiet, so maybe I'll move to this neighborhood because, or I'll do the following things. So as you start to evolve into certain things. Now there's a perception here, and that's not true. I mean, I enjoy a peace and quiet space.
Sure.
Where I won't hear traffic, or I won't hear neighbors' noise or anything. And once in a while, I like to throw down and hear some music, and maybe a neighbor will phone and say, "That today,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, so socialization is a very important thing to understand, and then to say that there are certain things that we want to undo and unlearn because they were unhealthy, just not because ribat bad, sila eso, but just because the circumstance we found ourselves was that.
mm,
Um, so until and it's a time thing. So you got to understand this thing as a time thing. I mean, I'm dying to see the many different shades and colors, of Black people being displayed in, just in neighborhoods and the way people live, and how like, well, you sort of know, if I want to buy an apartment there, average age yara is 24-year-olds, so it's nice, it's fun, and that's
yeah,
where I want to go.
yeah,
You know, and not Kibatlako neighborhood area because average age yara Kibatlabakana, and generally people will behave in a particular way. You know what I mean? So
mm,
so we don't have that yet.
mm, mm,
Until Tola Hyde Park, Moshalanguta Kifela, as an example.
yeah,
Just in the way it is, because there are many people who like that kind of life.
yeah,
Well, it can be anywhere, really.
yeah,
So there's, the challenges are complex. There's many layers to it, but it's untangling all these things that's very important in my view.
yeah. And I'm gonna jump back and forth on Kaya, and your roles there that you play. But I want to ask you something about education, because you mentioned young people, and you've got this passion of giving young people time. I met you at this other. It was an event. I think a wine tasting event in Hyde Park, and I was with my friend. I was like, "Hey man, you can't be going to chat to people when they're having fun." But I was like, "Anyway, let me just go try my luck." And you gave me, your time, and it's such an important thing to be given time by someone. It doesn't have to be an hour. It doesn't, but like just to hear Hormotwaring. Not
Yeah.
many people do that for young people, and you've got this passion for that. But the question here, yeah, education, because you've studied, you've got a diploma, yeah, management, but you also did enrolled in courses with Gibbs and Vets Business School and the Harvard Business School. Um, in a time where now information is so widely available for people to learn, and you see companies like Google have taken stances that for certain positions within their companies they don't even consider formal qualifications.
Yeah.
If somebody can really do the job, if they're passionate and somebody can work, they'll get the job. How important is education right now, or rather how relevant is it in today and going into the future? Just speaking about media in South Africa.
Look, it's a big question, that it's a big question because which part of any business are you talking about?
Mm.
If you're gonna want somebody to be a financial director, for
Yeah,
instance,
yeah.
yeah, you know,
You need someone with some
it's
knowledge,
got
right?
that
As well, as
you
well.
know,
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So
yeah.
so and it's important to understand those things.
Mm.
Um, Education is extremely important in my view, because education, but it's what kind of education, and it's how that education is used. Our biggest challenge will always be language.
Mm.
Um, you know, here we are, you and I, two Black boys from South Africa, speaking 98% a foreign language, because we depend on this language for the whole world to understand the conversation.
Mm.
Um, Whereas, Kaberdu Terrenga fela nje,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be any different.
Mm.
In fact, would probably be most comfortable.
Yeah.
Nga o chaya lali ditor tse ding, o je gore, motho o bua taba tse dingwe tse di tla dira lang." you
As
know,
well, sure.
um, because there's a sense of comfort,
Yeah.
in again who you are. Who you are has a lot to do with with how you speak, and language is very important. But and having said that, it's also important to understand how the world works.
Mm,
It's also important to understand, how success is seen somewhere else. Where it becomes critical is how you apply it and how you use it. You know,
mm,
um, and applying it and using it allows you to recognize people who are naturally talented,
mm,
who may not have the education.
mm,
And it allows you to collaborate with people and be able to create magic. So, life for me is about collaborations. It's about different people finding different opportunities just based on the streets they roam,
mm,
and places they've been, and different backgrounds, and all those different things. So it's very important to understand that people are about diversity. There's a there's a common thing in business, Mubarak. In fact, it's a thing I read years ago, that I used to like guys that wear suits, you know, until I realized that all of them work for guys in t-shirts.
sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's not what you've learned, or where you've learned what you've learned, or what you know from where you're. It's really about how you use your knowledge,
Mm,
and how you collaborate with others to advance them and and whatever you have in common in that particular space. And that for me has always been very important.
mm,
There's always going to be people who are passionate about education, and who will thrive in
mm,
education because that's what they like. And then there's people who will just like thrive because they've got passion, they've got drive, and they know how to collaborate and find people
mm,
they need, for whatever thing is needed at a particular time.
mm. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think another thing, it's important to note that I'm not telling people not to go to school, and I'm assuming you also know doing that, because I think if you decide as a young person, if you decide that you're not going to study traditionally, or get formal education in a certain thing, but the responsibility is still upon you as a young person, that okay, how do I now learn, because one thing that this entertainment industry, I think we've gotten into the habit of thinking that it's all about fun, it's all about talent. If I can play an instrument, I can become a super artist. Maybe you
yeah,
can, but the truth has, times have also shown us that you need to be able to teach yourself, you need to be able to learn. Like you say, you also need to be able to collaborate with other people. When
yeah,
I started working for Don't Look Down Productions, it was in 2010, so I was about 23 years old, 22 years old, and it took me about 3 years from getting into the company as a sound engineer, but I was mainly just a studio assistant guy. It took me 3 years, 3.5 years to become a studio director, and I was directing one of the most important shows for Channel O and Vuzu, entertainment
yeah,
shows. And at the time, we were, myself and another director, we were probably actually the youngest directors in the whole building of Mnet, and
yeah,
directing the youngest crew in that building. But I think it was because of the culture in the company, because you were coming in, yes, as this person who's hired to do this job, but the field was open for you. What you learn from there, it's really completely up to you. Some people will
yeah,
take it upon them to learn things more faster, to learn even more things unrelated to what they were hired to do. And I think that's actually one of the best things that you learn. Sometimes you don't even get that kind of experience at school in the formal education sense. But I think education really, for me, it is important as well. It doesn't need to be formal. If you decide that you're not going to do it formal, you've got the responsibility, which is a much higher responsibility, because now you need to be learning and growing on your own and from other people. And Greg, I want to get into music. It's no secret that Kaya plays the best music, and Like
Thank you,
Kergareta,
man.
ah
Thank
no,
you. Coming from you, that's beautiful.
yeah, nah, I mean, like, you play some of my stuff, your station plays some of my stuff, and I'm like, yo, there's no other station, and it's not only about me. Like, I'm just a fan of music, so the
Yeah.
amount of songs that I get from Kai, just kasha zemi feel like, hey, Mara, you guys bad summer. I was there. So, ke batla ho botsa fela hore, like, how much of your influence is that? Because I know you like soulful music, you like beautiful music, and
Yeah.
that's a passion of yours. How much of that influence really comes out, or do you just give the guys to do what they want to do with the station?
No, look, I mean, it starts with the listener, you know, and we are the listeners. You know, we are the people we are targeting. You know,
Mm,
and and that's really important for us, and that's what makes it easy. It's not like we are targeting people we've never met before. People, history of what music means to them, how they used to listen to music, from Deporto,
mm,
in the 70s and 80s,
yes.
Urauya Kuspotong, Urauya Koham Hangmang,
Yeah, yeah,
no Rako LSG,
yeah,
go LSG, as you play, Kildazala, two-room garage, Nali, 528 da, Upaisari Pia, Ujala sound,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And people come for sound, and people don't, there's not enough recognition, man, given to, um, what that did for the culture and music, because, Kospotong is where people got together to discuss, success, to discuss politics, to discuss family matters, to wind down, listen to music,
Mm,
um, you know, uh, all of these other things, yeah, happened. I mean, there was, later on, things started to get out of hand. Some of them, they were violent, some of them, Nahulwani and so forth. But
mm,
in the main, the culture really sort of grew, in parts, in those environments. And it's how it's all evolved from, not just Deporto, but like listening to music at home on a Sunday. This is who we are. This is where it comes from. And all we had to do was just hold a mirror, and and I've been asked the question before, what makes Kaya so successful? And our job is to hold a mirror. It's not to be clever,
mm,
by any means, but it's just to say, LSG, is this you?
mm,
And you look in that mirror and you're like, yes, this is me. And when you have that conversation with yourself in that mirror, you're also having a conversation with us and vice versa.
mm,
So everything flows into that. So whether you're putting together, a trip on a cruise, or a trip for a business crowd to Rwanda,
mm,
or a trip to New York for the jazz, or a trip to Miami for house music, all of these things, are a derivative of what our life is. It's a
mm,
celebration of that particular life. It's holding that mirror, and
yeah.
saying, in this time, this is what it is. But importantly, this is what it sounds like.
Mm, mm,
So, we have an incredible team of music guys, who've understood the DNA Yakaya,
mm,
and who themselves, come from, this background that I talk about. So,
mm,
because music, there are certain things you can't go do a PhD to program music.
yeah,
You kind of have had to be, you kind of have had to live a life,
yeah.
and have had that experience. And yes, you can then go learn the PhD to apply it cleverly, maybe, or to create something, that's masterful, and that's, incredibly powerful. But, it's, yeah, it's very, it's very important to understand that, these are people who are part of the culture, part of the community.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
with regards to, I mean, some of the members in your team, I've seen Kaya getting on, putting people on board who are not necessarily your day to day radio and TV presenter who can hold a link, but really their wealth of music comes through. Like specifically talking about the Saturdays Go Kaya Sound Supreme with Ken
Yeah.
Zero, the music, Louis Vega now part of it as well. And I'm just thinking, Fela Hore, is it a conscious thing that, you don't need to be actually talking, holding a link like John Pellman, like he that's what he does. He's a legendary journalist and he's good at that. But now putting people on radio, were there ever like anything conflicting about that, like within you, that you are putting people who are not necessarily radio presenters, but they bring so much wealth of music onto your shows?
Yeah. Look, I mean, from our days at YFM, our attitude was, who makes that decision? Who decides? Or link keying,
Yeah.
who bua jwang, voice radio keying? Who makes that decision? Who makes that call?
Sure.
Um, and we were like, stuff that, we're not going to subscribe to this thing. And your voice must be at this pitch, and you must pronounce things in a particular way. And no, have you got a story to tell? And are people wanting to hear from you? That for us was and always will be the most critical thing. You can have the best voice, Otiaka, best voice in the country. If you have nothing to say, people will always pick it up.
Yeah.
And people will not tune in for, just like a nice little thing, and that's it. You've got to have, a lot of content. You've got to be interesting, So, when we put Kabzela on air, people were like, yeah, this guy can't even string a sentence in English. We were like, who strings a sentence in English? He might say Ramachala to it.
Yeah.
He might say Ramachala score.
Sure.
Listen to the guy, listen to what the guy has to share, listen to his experiences, his love for music, his love for culture, his love for people, his love for laughter, and he was one of the biggest phenomena there. You think about Mzegeze, again.
Yeah.
Zixman was this chaotic guy, but everybody identified with that character because Kasi William, Kiltang, Tawasika, Belela Manje, again, part of reflecting, because if you say you're going to be authentically, kind of showcasing who you are, it's important to showcase those things. And that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is, Unale, Colin Khad, who's very smooth, when he's on air, but very knowledgeable about the jazz that he plays and the music that he plays, and the passion comes across. Brenda Sisani, very similar thing. Ken Zero, very similar thing. Just because
Nikki B as well.
He speaks less. I mean, Nikki, even worse, she's a teacher. So, can you scale?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And take you through the experience. And this is what's appealing to people. This is what's appealing in life in general. If you think about marriage, between two people, people who've had lifelong happy relationships have always talked about everything else but love. Love is there, but love is not enough. You must be interesting. You must be funny. You must be the things that your partner desires, and vice versa. And radio is the same. The relationship between you and the person that listens to you, or any platform for that matter, any of our platforms, whether it's the Afropolitan magazine, and whether it's Jazzworry, whether any of the things that we do, have got to be consistent, in rejuvenating that love on an ongoing basis. You don't just sit back, relax, and say, no, Kidrowi like Imunati, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's holding everything down. No, you got to keep things interesting all the time. And so those things have always kind of stood out in good stead. Skumba is probably the biggest comedian in this country.
Yeah, he is.
And there was a point where, you know, um, somebody had made a decision already. Well, I mean, if you're not English speaking, then you're not going to appeal to a lot of people. And who says? Who
Mm,
makes that decision? You
mm,
know? So that's the I suppose the bravery and always just kind of seeking to go against the grain all the time and say, interesting people don't come from a particular place; they come from everywhere.
yeah, true.
You know,
And I think we've missed so much potential good, great content, that we could have gotten from certain personalities who were never given a chance because how kgone go bua sekgowa wa ntlhaloganya, or
absolutely.
how kgone go bua fluent English, or whatever the case may be, or your face is like this. But I think more and more the world is kind of becoming, we becoming more authentic to what we wanna do, who we wanna say, like to actually be say it without fear. Gore nna ke mang, this is what I do, and this is who I am. And ne re bua just before we started recording, and I was saying to you, like, for me doing this thing, if you asked me 10 years ago, my man, are you gonna be on camera, asking people questions, I would have said completely no. What, like, I'll
Yeah.
never do that.
Yeah. And I mean, I mean, your program, for instance, you would have been in that category. Yabatuba, no, you're not a TV guy.
Mm,
You know,
mm,
because you don't have the personality for it, and you don't have to do the link. You don't know how to do the links and all that stuff. Who says? Who
yeah.
makes that decision? You have spoken to a lot of very good friends who are held in high regard, who have heard certain things and learned things from that I didn't particularly know.
Mm,
Because of you, I've been able to rediscover certain things about people that I've always known. But being their friends, you take for granted to ask certain questions,
mm,
and you've been able to provide that. All of us are coming to your platform to have these conversations with you.
yeah.
We're not coming to um, you know a person who's being famous celebrity for being on television. We're here to have a conversation with a culturist, a culture driver, a person who cares about the movement, who cares about the people behind the movement and the generations after that.
Mm.
And everybody makes time for that.
Yeah, hey, bro. And I'm so honored. I'm still shocked. Every time, Kekopa, an interview, even with you, I was like, hey, am I gonna try this? But like, gracefully so, you agreed to do this, and I'm super grateful for this, bro, Greg. And I
Thank
wanna
you, man. Thank you for having me.
before we go about your DJing and music, I wanna ask you about advertising and music because Kokaya, Kaya is such a big station, and the station is growing. You can hear it, you can see the things that are in the station. But I'm worried, a bit worried, Corey. As Kaya grows, at the rate at which you are growing, will we see a time where you guys are kind of almost forced not to stick to the kind of music that you've been doing, that you've been playing throughout the years? Are we gonna see such changes as time goes?
So there will always be change, and I think that's the first thing that um, for any human, to any human being to maintain a level of sanity, you've got to say there's got to be change. The question you want to ask yourself is, am I part of the change? Am I making the change, or is change happening to me? Now, generally, people don't like to change. They say they like change and they want change, but they don't want to change. So
True.
who must change, and how is change going to happen? If
Yeah.
you know what I mean. But but what is the important thing? The important thing is that the purpose and the passion, and the drive and the understanding of what the current challenge, and I'm talking about the human challenge, is, and how we effect a positive change towards that, um, is the thing that needs to drive us, right? So, and I'll tell you a short story because as a music guy, you will appreciate this. So when I joined Kaya, um, a couple of years later, Messiah Kumetu was promoted to music manager. Because Messiah loves music, and um, so we promoted Messiah to music. So he and France, who's still one of our music managers, were in the music department. And I pulled him into my office once, um, and we were having a music meeting, strategic session, and I said to them, "I'm going to play you 10 tracks, and I want you guys to then comment, about what you've just heard, So I played, 10 records, didn't show them what they were, didn't show them anything. I just like played 10 records, and they probably knew maybe four, out of the 10 records. The other six, something was familiar, something I'd heard before, but um, and another thing would have been, oh, this is there another version of the song. I didn't, realize that, and so we played those songs. And their comments were, oh man, that's awesome. Are these okay? We know these four, but are these other ones new tracks? But they've got a nice classic feel to them, and so they made all these comments about what they were hearing. And I said, did you enjoy it? And they said, yeah, no, we did a lot. And what I'd done, was, I played them records spanning 40 years, and they didn't even realize, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I picked a tune from the 70s, then I would move to the 90s, then I'd move to the 80s, then I'd move to 2000s, then and they couldn't recognize the era, of the songs. And I said to them, this is what's important. It's not about when the record came into being. It's about what the record sounds like and what it means. And there's got to be a DNA, there's got to be a golden thread that runs through the music. So to answer your question, for as long as that DNA stays, everything will be fine.
Yeah.
That's what's important. But the critical thing is going to be, being able to be relevant to people, of that time. A 35-year-old in 2055 is going to be able to enjoy their version of Kai.
Yes. Yo,
Yeah.
ke a utlwa, Bra Greg. And while we're on the music topic, I have to ask you about your love for house music, because I mean it's clear that Orata music or Baya, or you've got such a wide range of music that you love. But specifically
Yeah.
talking about house, now when I first heard of your name, like Nixon's and I think it was 2003. Yeah, I think 2003. No released What's Fat Pussycat 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I still don't get why those compilations, stopped so abruptly after Vinny did the fifth one.
Yeah.
I was talking to Spina Maloka, and DJ Spina was saying some DJs, when they play your song as a producer, like they own the song. And I
Yeah.
haven't seen anyone play Louis Vegas, that Luisito Quintero's Aquias Todas. I haven't seen anyone play that record the way and own it, like you really do own it. Um,
Yeah.
but I do have to ask you, even though you knew you were such a dope DJ back in the days, it seems like you still didn't pursue it as much as like both Vinny did and Christos did in terms of
Yeah.
really pursuing the nightclub, and really going after it for as long as they did, and you chose
Sure.
other paths. Why was that decision the way it is?
And I've had to make that decision a few times in my life. Um, um, the first time I had to make that decision was at YFM. Where we had started the station, and I was so I had a weekend show as well. But I was music programmer, and then dabbling into producing, and because this was a new thing, so you were doing five jobs,
Yeah, yeah.
um, and I had to make a decision to say, well, I have to focus. So what am I focusing on? And the you know, and then the question around, what am I good at, and where can I make the best difference? And it's hard because essentially I went and chose the things that are behind the scenes. Things that, as a youngster, I mean, everybody wants to, like you want to be in front of the people,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like make people happy and
yeah.
watch people lose their minds. Um, but other people had to do other things, you know. Um, and I saw myself as a person who, has an opportunity to do other things. So I fired myself from being on air and concentrated on being behind the scenes and actually, eventually getting to run the station. Similarly in sort of my DJ career, being part of DJU is such a blessing. I mean, um, you know, Oskido, Vinny, Chris in particular, are guys who, I've followed, and like I couldn't even get into some of their parties. I mean, Vinny ke motsanja lo re mona. Phela wena ne ke na lo sheba ke shota ka listen, I can knew enough ke shota ka if I could go there, And sometimes I can't go because I'm actually scared of those places, believe it or not. I'm not, Nick like as much as I love music and I knew a lot about music, I wasn't a teenager that was in clubs or gigs or any of that stuff. Um, but I was able to follow the music and follow the DJs, and I was able to get access to music, which I think for me was a big deal. Access was a cool thing. So having to work with these guys, guys who were your music heroes as well.
Yeah.
And I always tease them, Kere, I akitaka lona phela la ke ntwana lona le matime nna le fresh ke rona dintwana na tse dingwe tse ke ditaka tsa bo Quincy Jones, because kgale ba le morando um, and ending up working with them, and creating really successful ventures, and also as a group and as individuals, helping each other reach ideals and in things that we are passionate about individually was amazing. But I also had passion for brands. I also had passion for creating stories and the connection between brands and music. So I do a lot of work still with Mosquito just around those particular spaces. There are numerous projects that we've created that have been really amazing. Whether it was um, you know Casper's first MTN sort of engagement, which was quite a big deal back in the day. To creating, being a huge part of the people that created a massive international culture for South African house music. Having been going to Miami all those years and marketing South Africa, marketing our music, marketing our DJs. Yeah. So there's a lot. So you start to realize that if all of us are doing the same thing, then we're not going to be able to achieve any of those things. We can't all be strikers.
Yeah. For
Tshwantse,
sure.
tshwantse o be le Messi,
Yeah. Yeah. As
or
well.
Ronaldo, and then rona re teng ba bang ko morao ko ntse o phasa di-ball.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I prefer, if you're using football terms, I prefer midfield positions, because you get to distribute and you get to see what's behind you and you get to see what's in front and on the sides. Because as a number 6 player, you must be well rounded. You must understand the ways along. you know, ha striker se le out of place, o kgona ho kena lo striker. Ha backline e lahlile side, o kgona ho boela morago lo
Yeah.
kwala. If a flanker is, you know, so and I think that's what's helped me in the past is that, you know, I mean, I remember even just back in the day, you know, crowd sound, you can't just stand there or climb. You know, you
Yeah.
jump on and you
Yeah.
make the thing happen,
Yeah.
you know, until that person comes. You know, and if the next day you've got to stand in front of 10 clients and talk about, you know, an audience, that's what you do, you know.
Mm.
And if that same afternoon you've got to be, you know, in front of 10 kids who want to hear about, you know, careers, you've got to be able to jump in and do it. So
Mm.
that number six position for me has always been, you know, yeah,
Yeah.
my
I,
strength. Yeah.
no, Bra Greg. I think for me as well, at some point I used to consider myself an artist only, even though Nike Spana, you know, I've worked for 10 years, but I was always making music within that time, you know, and
Yeah.
my job as it's not an easy job, but like it always it never felt like span, you know, because I was always enjoying what I was doing, and I thought myself as an artist more than as somebody who's in the media, and I've
Mm.
grown to um, see myself differently, you know, through I think the past 2 or 3 years, to just really graft what else could I do, you know, with this. Am I only a musician? You know, what about my own thoughts? Do they matter even? You know, what else could I do with this mind of that I have? And I
Sure.
think doing this show has shown me that I definitely can go into other things and get myself really stretch myself and learn from other people, you know, as well, aside from just being a music producer. And one
Yeah.
of the other things that you mentioned, I think what's important for me, the way ke bonang your career, Bragrek, people like you who are in certain positions, um, who are coming from the underground, who know who and understand underground music, it's such a blessing. It cannot be understated, you know. I mean, it cannot be stated enough for it. To have people who understand underground music in those kind of positions, I don't think Kaya would sound the way it sound if it was led by somebody else, and people in your team like Bonatina is Baseteng, it does it comes across, yeah, Utwala, when you listen to the station. And I think it's so important that we've got people like you who do understand our kind of music, who can speak for
Thank
our music, especially to people who don't really understand what we do.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
No,
thanks, I mean, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
before Fetsa Greg, nigga, what's about finer things in life? Because I know hore cigars, classic cars, you know, gaulwe grandy, kidlo zahao tseo, the wine da. Have you always had a taste for finer things?
You know, and you know, it's called finer things. I get it, but yeah, look, I mean, so you know, let's start Kamurara.
Hey, Tara.
A lot of people don't know this, but I actually started drinking at 29. Right. And the reason I started drinking was the food, you know, because I love good food. And the reason I love food and good food so much is my mother. You know, mama go laling narata pizza play the tot vandaag urata pizza. You know, so I would sit there as a kid, you know, ali busy there. And then I ended up, you know, starting to help. You know, um, and and cooking is a creative thing, and I think again these things, the socialization. You know, for batho ba baya, cooking ke mmereko, you know, it was a chore
Yeah.
because in the way ne re gola ka teng, wa phega, o phegela batho ba baya, or just like it's such a it's a chore, you know.
Yeah.
But when you sought variety and you wanted to do things differently, and you know, and I suppose you had a family that appreciated food and taste, because you allowed yourself to develop those tastes. You know, you know, you start to love those things. So you start to be curious about stuff. So I started getting curious about tastes, you know, which is, you know, the wine pairings as you go for, like, you know, tastings and all those things, and just being curious about, you know, you know, they taught me, or don't cross a strata, man. You know, until run around like I say one.
Mm.
o tlo bite, you know.
Mm.
So exposure is everything, right?
Mm.
And half the time, I know that it seems like uh, it's a high life, be like stylish, new. No, like the more you dig, the more you learn, right, about these things, right?
Mm.
The more you discover everything more life from inner scale. You understand?
Mm.
So, just like a car is a car is a car, right? There's different ranges and levels of cars, but it's a car.
Mm.
And you might find, Jorge, a certain age of a particular car is actually far better than the newest thing. Um, or you might find, Jorge, because you were able to find an older model and an older version of something, unala kinto and it's valuable. So it's really understanding the value
Mm.
of things and value that people place on things. For some people, I mean, things are just whatever, I mean, I can tell you now, there are a lot of things that people have, but you can see ceiling because ke senepe sa makoko sa kgale.
Mm.
Eh, go neng koko a rata painting e beng kwa and ha o tlhaloganye gore maybe Makoko Nakula Jurassic World. But because you don't know,
Mm.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's really about paying attention.
Mm.
How via Kokasi, holding to Tepaya, the Kara, Zahale, did it more than what pen, you
Mm.
know?
Mm.
And that car has been like that. And but I would say, Maluma, I think it's Kakara. Couldn't repair
Yeah.
like, but because you are into vintage things, you're thinking, yo, son, how about this model, yeah, Merc, it's like I
Mm.
NMK, that type of thing. So it's really about learning what we have. Value is everywhere around people.
Mm.
Um, but some of these things are designed to intimidate us, so that we stay away from them. You understand?
Mm. Mm.
Like, who are, like, yes, it's important to understand sponsor artists. It's important to understand, brushstrokes or whatever those things. It's fine. But sometimes you just love the picture because it's an amazing picture. It tells a story,
Yeah.
and you want to be able to get it.
Mm.
It's really paying attention, Otak. In every category of things, there are things at different price points.
Mm.
The question is, are you into those things or not?
Mm.
you know, and discovering a really nice, South African wine, or a really nice French wine, does not mean it turns over 10,000.
Yeah.
The Hunali, and like I said, Taki, Rotsika didenya mahashahasha, did you point? Why to Hunali posing a cookie cran dilo? Understand? Yeah, because it's about knowledge. It
Yeah.
really is about knowledge. When I do time, nearly paisa Jewish, ne?
Mm.
In the early days. And Narato ako Narlo pa di check it.
Yeah.
And he would find things that no one has, right?
Mm.
And they were labeled secondhand. Ne?
Mm.
And then we discovered the Tamalina somehow he used to get, you know, wardrobes that are used in movies.
Yeah.
Obviously. But
Yeah.
after that, I mean, that wardrobe is bought and paid for.
Mm.
So somebody had a um, second-hand market to sell those things, because you want to get rid of them. And,
Yeah.
I mean, Tom Cruise, Nasha, check it once
Yeah.
in a movie, and that's it. And, you get to lay your hands on some of these things that came at a very cheap price because where they come from, the value of it has dropped. I mean, these things, they're changed. I know.
Mm. Mm.
All I'm saying is it's really about knowing Dikoti or Gengi but learn about those things. Don't just consume them.
Yeah.
Learn about where they're from, learn about, who makes them. You'll be amazed at the things that you will discover and how that world can open up for you. And it's something that's not unique to certain people. It's something that's available for everybody.
Mm. Mm.
Um, Everything in language attack and turbuile ka language earlier.
Mm.
How la tela, whether it's being an accountant or a doctor or a lawyer, um, you know, mututa retla something jika language at the end. Half the time it's Latin. Yeah, khali.
Yeah.
And I would say, "Shab shab, red leg worker."
Yeah.
I don't know. You work up in Mongkong.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, those are pain in Mongkong.
Sure.
Understand?
Yeah.
So yeah. So yes. I mean, I love um, finer things as they're labeled. And yeah, I mean, there's moments where you dabble on, the extreme lie, because you want to straddle those things. But I mean, on a day-to-day basis, I mean, there's not a lot of people, truthfully, who live like that, and I think it's important for people to learn.
Mm, mm. And just talking about art, I want to talk to you about this painting.
Yes.
It's a painting by a friend of mine called Yul Damaso. He's based in is it Greenside? Yeah, he's in Greenside, and it's like an oil on canvas. It's quite big,
Sure.
like yeah, ke tla o tjhaela ka
Yeah, I
yona
can
ho
see
etsa-
it. It's quite a thing.
yeah, it's quite a thing. Like with Mandela as a boxer, yeah, there's a story
Yes.
behind it. Mara re tla bua ka yona. Just in closing, ke batla ho botsa about your relationship le Louis Vega.
Mm.
Yeah, like how, I mean, how has it become this brotherhood that it is?
Sure. I mean, my relationship with Verga in 30 seconds is quite a difficult thing, but
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh, because again, it spans over 20 years.
Mm,
Um, and the simplest way to explain it is we are two different people who grew up in different parts of the world experiencing the same kind of life.
mm,
And that's, I mean, he talks about Hector Lavoe Anquilai, who was like a famous salsa musician, who was an incredible, musician who inspired them.
mm,
I talk about the Tamalaga who, collects records. I mean, jazz, soul, he's like, he loves his music, so we grow up experiencing those things, street culture, music, but also how music is such an important um, language,
mm,
that we both speak. We love similar things. I mean, when he recorded Aquilas Cosas Torres, when he did that remix, he was actually doing it for himself, funny enough, um, and every time I like, Italy and wherever, people would like, enjoy it, um, and for him it was kind of like a personal song. I use it as kind of like, to blend in the mix and to do some interesting things.
mm,
And when I got the record, I mean, I lost my mind, and he didn't. So in that particular, I don't even remember the actual year. And Azmarala, you got in Nambele Kimuchin, when I really number it out. Like, and if you ask him, he'll tell you. There's been 10 occasions where he's done songs, and I'm like, this is a major record. It's gonna be huge.
mm,
And I never, not this version. Maybe Hanka, it's a version this also skill, my man,
mm,
Um, and half the time, you know, I'd be right, and it would be songs that he loves that he thinks the world wouldn't like, you know. So I think a big part of our connection was that we love the same things in music.
mm,
When he did Circa de Mi, and they came down in 2006 for the jazz, and we brought them up for the Southern African Music Conference, go Newtown.
mm,
Um, I mean, he cried tears out, baseline, singing "Seka to Me." I mean, he just, and there's a video of that. Like, he lost his mind.
oh, damn.
When he did, Aquilas Cosas Torres, similar. When he did "I Choose You Now," almost recently, a couple of years ago.
Mm,
All of these records that he would make. So every time I did this for you. You're gonna love this one.
yeah,
But yes, this for me is like, I don't think the world will hear it, but
yeah.
so we love the same things from that
Mm,
perspective. Yeah, and love for family, love for people, young talent,
Mm.
So there's, we click on a lot of levels that way.
Yeah, yo, if I could get that video, because Kausani, I've got him on the show tomorrow, like, and it's such it seems planned, but like to have you and then have him on the next day, it's such a blessing for me. But there's one thing in about our chala on Prague, like, before
No, and
Fetsi.
in fact, the story that's important to tell,
Yeah.
which is a little known story, is Louis Vega was a huge um, influence in getting our music into the global space. Um, he 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 was the first one to hear us,
Mm.
um, and you know, to me, he holds such an important role. He played such an important role because he took our music and played it across the world. I'll never forget Rufita Go Miami. A few months, about 6 months after we had given him the Mafikizola record, and they'd just done Loot,
Yeah.
Lee Muren.
Yeah.
Um, and it was October, I think October in 2000, I think. Um, and we gave him, in fact, Oskido was playing Loot, and he lost his mind. Yo, I want this record, man, I want this record. And
Yeah.
then he took Oscar's record, and his schedule, Hatlucha Imam Zanti, um, was Italy, Australia, 2 gigs in New York, had something in LA, had a couple of things in back in London and Italy, and then we met in Miami in March. Now, Miami, whatever, lefatshe kaofela la convention. Go tshwana le, when we all go up to go watch Black Coffee now,
Yeah.
it's, the world converges in those spaces. Um, and he played Lute, and it was a party it was hosted by Staff Magazine, and he was DJing that night, and it was in a penthouse with probably about 250 people, so fans, industry people, those types of people, and he played that song, man. And Kira, in fact, we snuck into that party because there is not the bands, and we had just arrived like the day before. So Skido and I had invitations, Markirali and Li Bruce, Li Spikiri, Li Mauta, so we sneak into this gig, and everybody just like disappears. We're seeing people, so we start talking to people, and Louis plays the song, and he hadn't even seen that we were in the room. So it wasn't that he was playing the song because he sees us in the room.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that we had arrived, and this thing plays. But man, I watch the whole place. People lose their minds, and they're singing the song. And I mean, obviously, I was a suit, so they can't hear, or, it's very low. They're just like, we whoa.
Yeah.
Ballistic, right? And man, the most incredible feeling ever.
Mm.
When you want to stand on top of the table and say, keep it out, it's like
Yeah.
that one, it's like that one, Bruce, Chance,
Yeah.
Mauta, speaking as well. It was such a beautiful moment, man.
Mm.
I had tears in my eyes, and it was a moment for me where I knew how the world had accepted our music. They accepted us. They were starting to see us as a player and not just a consumer. When Black Coffee did Superman, and Black Coffee worked hard on that record, and he was obviously trying to get a lot of the guys to do remixes and those types of things. And the person who picked up on it quickly was Jelly Bean Benitez.
Yeah.
And Louis was upset. Hey man, like I missed out on this record, man. Like this was like,
Yeah.
and I said to him, no, Andona, Superman is a big record, right? And it's an amazing record, but Superman is not you. Superman is Black Coffee. It's like but the mix that you must do, which will have a far deeper meaning. And I'm, and I said to him, I need you guys to do this mix. Was We Are One,
Yeah.
Librahim.
Yeah.
And I said to him, this is the song to do. You guys must do the song together. Forget the big songs.
Mm.
Do the songs that have deeper meaning. And that's how We Are One remix happened.
Mm.
That Kofi had done Librahim, and then Louis did the remix of it.
Yes.
And it didn't become a massive hit, but it became a very special song with a very special story. And it goes down in history as, one of those incredible moments where, three generations. I mean, imagine Brahu, Black Coffee, and Louis, on one record is, for me, historic. And it doesn't seem like today, but, in a few years' time, it will be. Yeah.
Yo, nah, I think I think
Thanks, guys.
one thing that I didn't tell you, in 2008, during I'm a student of the South African Music Conference, SAMC really was the thing for me that really broke me into the industry. I remember 2008, you guys used to have this DJ competition, and in 2008, no snana go by, So at the time, I think we were meant to put our lineages into one box, and then you guys were picking up a couple of names. Yeah. I remember the last name, and you picked up the last name, and I was just sitting there thinking, damn, am I ever gonna get this chance? Or we'll pick up my lineage, like food around time.
No way.
I promise you. And and I went on to win. I went on to win that competition.
Wow, actually, wow.
Yeah. Go Vets it. Vets.
Great. The birds thing. Yes.
Yeah. And as a person on a fate to go Vets, I used to go to Vets 2006 and 2007, doing electrical engineering, and I did badly, in my second year. But that moment was kind of like a juncture for me that really gave me all of those connects, with you, with DJ Crystal. So that's where we first met, actually. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, geez, now that moment is coming back. Yeah, that was you, though.
Yeah, that was me, bro. That was me. And it's been 2008, so just under.
And I love what you've done, man. I really applaud you. I respect what and that whole conference and this whole thing is about that. It's about just like passing the baton and just getting guys to take it to another level. And what you do is amazing with it, man. And thank you for proving us right.
Thank you so much, and thank you for joining me, Bragrak.
Anytime, man. Anytime. Thank you.
To everyone who's watching the show, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the show, please tag somebody in the comment section who might learn from the conversation or who might just enjoy the conversation too. Also share the video so more people can see it. And let's remember to stay creative. Peace out.